It's a book of poetry about basically the quest for meaning and the search for purpose. I borrowed from great literary traditions of the past, like the tradition of Sufism, aspects of surrealism, which are very dominant in most of my work.
If you really want to dig deep into Abubakar's work, you have to begin to think about Sufism. You have to be able to begin to think about the civilization and the exchanges between Sufism and the Arab civilization and the African civilization.
It's about answering the question about who we are as humans and then our place here. Things about existentialism, talking about purpose, about love, about life.
The poet is nothing but a universal ambassador of love. Cynic issued a statement to all modern poets.
When I was writing those poems, I was not thinking about the central theme. I was not even thinking about a collection. I was just experiencing each of the individual poems as units, as literary spaces on their own. But I think now I can look back and say that essentially I was interested in experiencing the transcendental.
His poetry seeks a spiritual absolute of sorts. Honestly, his style of poetry is quite unusual.
The Poet of Dust creates two balances. It has a great musicality that people who do not necessarily want to touch down deep into the intellectual can relate with without losing touch with meaning. So it had two leveled surface meanings.
One, I found his language very inventive, very daring, bold, very maybe bohemian in some style, because the way he discussed so-called taboo subject like sex, for instance, it was so in your face. And I think that's what the artist should do. Look, the artist should express himself or herself, and do not really. You don't need to write to the expectation of anybody or the society. First of all, say what you want to say, because the first thing about art is freedom. Next is sincerity of purpose, sincerity of vision. So I like that about him, that he is so bold. The strong of diction.
But I think that there is a Godhead in all of us. And the greatest thing about God is creation. And the easiest way we can key into that is through sex, which runs heavily in what, we can choose to think about vagina and breast and all that. And I'm not a man, but I understand that at the time when you're about to come, there's a feeling that comes upon you that takes you out of who you are as a human being. For women, it happens in childbirth, when the baby comes, and we hear a lot of women say, when I had my child, all the pain that I had seemed to wash away. But for me, I think it's human beings transcending the level where we're just body and flesh and we're spirit. And that's what I get, that's what comes through strongly in your poetry. And I think whether we like it or not, we all strive to achieve some measure of the Godhead. And we can do it different ways, but I think the singular way in which God has bestowed that ability is through the union between two people when they're making love. So it speaks greatly to me, and thank you.
His messages are really powerful, and I think you have to take a moment to understand and understand each point.
That you read the book, it says one thing to you, another person reads the book, gets another perspective of it. That a poem could answer so many things to so many people at the same time. Great work of poetry.
I'm very interested in the functionality of poetry in the society. I've been engaging with poetry, and at a point I began to ask myself, what is the role, what is the usefulness of poetry? And it is very apparent that poetry is not being put to use in the service of power, in economics, in the military, in government. It's very evident. So, by and large, I came to understand that poetry is important in that it nourishes man's contemplative and intuitive faculties. Adonis, one of my patron saints in poetry, said that poetry makes nothing happen in that it cannot start a revolution. However, it can refine, the intuitive and contemplative faculties of the man, and by changing man, poetry can change society.